Hey everyone, I'm Gracie, and welcome to Grace of a Military Child podcast. The world should know how unique military children are. We may look like normal children on the outside, but we go through some pretty extraordinary circumstances that shape us to the leaders we are today. That is the sole purpose of this podcast, to share our stories to the world. Hi, Xanadu. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So you were a military child yourself, and you actually joined later in your life. So who was in the military and what branch?
My dad was in for a few years when I was a baby. He got out shortly after, so we didn't move much, but we did have my aunt and my uncle were both Air Force, and my dad was Air Force. And so kind of just stuck with more of the family that we knew that were military.
Yeah. So you came from a very high military background with many family members being in. Do you remember, you said you were young, but do you remember any moves that you had or any moves that maybe your family had?
I don't actually. I was little. Zelina
Little,
would probably
yes.
have more of that.
So you have your two sisters that kind of grew up with you and you watched grow up, and you all joined the military after that. Zelina and Xenia joined as well. You joined the Air Force? Did having your dad and much more of your family in the Air Force encourage you to join the Air Force?
So when my dad went DOD, so he was a firefighter on an air base. So we spent a lot of time on the base. So we kind of got to see like the pilots, like C-130s and heavies, went to air shows and stuff like that. So it was always pretty neat to see that. And then every now and then you would see the uniform. And so that became a big part of, I was like, that looks exciting, but I don't know if that's what I want to do yet. And so as I got older, when I graduated high school, I wanted to go to college for a little bit and go in as a officer. But at the same time, I didn't want to stay in the town we grew up in because it was really small. So I was like, I need to see places. And my mom and dad were always like, you either go to college or you go to the military, but you can't stay here. So
yeah. So that kind of, encouraged you to get
yes.
out and get somewhere.
Yes.
Did you join like the Air Force Academy, or did you go to a university, and what were you looking for at that point?
So once I graduated, I had a couple of scholarships to like art institutes and that sort of thing. And I wasn't going anywhere. And so I started going to college at a little community college after turning down my scholarships because my mom was just an empty nester. So I felt bad leaving her. And so I was just like, oh, what do I do? And then I came across some situations where I was just like, I can't be here anymore. And so I just went to the recruiter with my best friend. She's actually in the military too. And her and I joined the same day.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome to have a friend, kind of going in it together.
Well, that's the funny part is we joined together. She couldn't get a date until a month after I did. So we were like 2 weeks overlap for basic, 2 weeks overlap from ITP. And then the last time I saw her was 2005. And then I didn't see her again. Yeah. And then I just saw her last year for the first time.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It took us completely opposite sides of the globe.
And that's like the military life at its best right there, for sure.
It was crazy. I was like, I haven't seen you.
You joined together, but those 2 weeks changed the whole game at that point then.
And it did. It really did. I think the biggest influence was when my sister joined.
Which
when Zelina
one?
left. Zelina.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when she left, I was actually mad at her for leaving. And I didn't understand why at that point. I just knew like I spent most of my time with her. And so when she left, I took it personal.
Yeah.
And then 9/11 happened. And to get all the letters from her, and when they activated her unit and the security went from, oh, you could just drive on the base with your ID card to we're going to search your vehicle.
Yeah.
And it just like
it was
heightened.
A huge transition.
Yeah. So I was like, oh man. And she used to tell me in her letters, don't join, keep going to school, don't join. And I was like, I'm going to join.
Why not?
Right.
So are you the middle child then?
No, I'm actually the youngest. Zelina's the oldest, and Xenia's the middle. She joined, Xenia did, probably 6 months after I did.
Okay. So you were the second one to join out of the three of you.
Yeah.
Do you think you were, even though Zelina said don't join, do you think you were motivated to join by her joining and that kind of
like path? Any kid.
Yeah.
It's like any kid. Don't do it. Okay. I'm
gonna do it anyways.
Why not?
Yeah, for sure. What were some of your memories being on base? Even seeing the air shows as a kid and everything around that.
Oh, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was always pretty neat to see all the different aircrafts and the stunt pilots, like the Thunderbirds, and the Blue Angels. And then those aircrafts didn't have quite the impact as a kid as they do now, because my husband's a pilot. And so now, like, I'm like, oh man, I never thought like all that would happen. And so it's just weird where I'm like, I just grew up around airplanes and now I'm married to a pilot.
Yeah, it's weird the way things work out sometimes.
Yes.
You grew up around it and then, it's basically become your life now since you married into it. And, the military has always more or less been a part of you then before you were even born.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember, now that you've been in yourself and you've had the time as a military child, even though it was a little bit, is there a place that you call home?
Well,
it's one of the hardest questions to ask.
So, I mean, I grew up in Ohio. It'll always be home. But 2 years ago, my grandfather passed away. And so when I left for the military, my parents moved. And so when I was deployed, they were in a new house. And then when I got back, they were in a different house. And so they had moved three to five times in my time frame in the military. And so I never went back to that house after graduation. So I call my grandpa and grandma's house home. We actually just bought their home. And so it stays in the family because that's more like the home feel than going to their house now. And it's just because it hasn't been a permanent in my life. But my hometown will always be Southington.
Yeah. It's such a hard, thing to ask is where's home? Yeah. Especially as a military child, I've had the experience of moving. And then since you were in yourself and you've experienced many different places, it's hard to pick one location and say, okay, this is home. This is where I call home. And there's so many different places that have such an impact on your life that they each have a piece of you that you have
Yeah,
to pick then and say, hey, this is
absolutely.
home.
The generic answer is wherever they put me.
Yeah. Yes. That home is where the heart is, home is where the family is. But yeah, at the same point, you and your sisters are all living in different areas, and your parents are, so you have a family everywhere. So,
Yeah.
do you feel that you had more of a, let me think of how to ask it. What were your experiences growing up around base versus being in the military yourself? How do you feel those two different experiences compare?
Of growing up and being like
Being
going to the
around the
military.
base? Yeah.
Well, I guess growing up in the fire station, you kind of get into that mentality of everybody's family. It's like you get
Mhm.
30 big uncles
Yeah.
and they still, every now and then I'll get like a random friend request of somebody and I'm like, what? Like, who is this? And so I'll ask my dad, he's like, do you remember Bob from here and Ray from there? He's like, these are these guys. I'm like, oh, okay. But you just kind of go with it, and so
Yeah.
you always have, even when you would show up to the base, they always have like a little treat for you. And where if I was walking around the base, a lot of people would be like, oh, that's Steve's daughter, Oh, I mean, I specifically remember a car accident and I didn't even get out of the car yet or take my driver's license out to hand it to him. They're like, it's okay, it's Steve's daughter, because that community is so big. And so
Yeah.
they knew as firefighters from the base, like in his volunteer work, that who we were. So I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. But joining, I could say it's probably not a whole lot different. I worked in fighter squadrons pretty much my whole career. And um, even when I would go TDY, like the commander would be like, make sure she gets home or make sure that she's okay. And so it's like you just get all these big brothers at that point. And so it's kind of the same. And you honestly, even if I were to travel somewhere, my parents from their military experience or from being a firefighter, and even my sisters or all of us, no matter where we go, they're like, hey, so and so's there. If you need a place, you can go there. And so I'm like, oh, okay, call your friend.
Yeah, it's definitely, whether you like it or not, you gain a huge family with you.
Right.
And you have people all across the globe that no matter where you are, if you need anything, someone will be there to help and support you for sure.
Right.
So you're the youngest child out of the three of you. Do you think that had an effect on your personality growing up and then joining in the military yourself, besides, the retaliating against what Lina said?
Joining definitely matured me faster, for sure. Where, I mean, as reading the Lina's letters, I pictured the military in general a little different. But then she also joined the army. So when I joined the Air Force, I was like, uh, the experience in general going in the beginning, I was like, what did I do? So I was like, because they would come in and they kick my bed and like get on your face, and I was like, this is awful. But I have a competitive side. All three of us do, and so it became like, well, I can't quit, and so it just pushed me harder to do things better. And when I got to my first base, uh, it was hard in the sense where I'm like, this is the first time I've really been on my own. And, but I made friends quick. I'm pretty social. And so that was the easy part. The hard part was like, I can't see my mom and dad when I feel like it. I can't go see my sister when I feel like it, especially my oldest one. She was gone for the longest time. And then my middle sister joined, so I could even like call her or talk to her because she was going through basics. I was like, I don't know
Sure.
what to do.
You were
So
on your own.
yeah, and so it's not like I could call Lina and say, hey, like, what do I do here? But the good part actually about all that was when I joined, I went to Pope Air Force Base, and she was at Fort Bragg.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
were on the same base. So I got to see her after my first year there fairly often.
Yeah. It's hard because, even moving a lot, you have your siblings and they become your best friend. You have like a built in best friend for your whole life. And then being separated from them because of the military and basic training and everything that comes with that, then you're lost because you don't even know what to do. You're missing out on having a friend then.
Right, right. And one experience I remember, Zelina and James, when I just got back from probably a TDY or something, and Zelina was like, hey, I'm coming back to Bragg. I'll be there for a little bit. So I met her at what they call their chow hall. And in the Air Force, they clean up after you in the DFAC. So I got up and I left my tray, and she's like, what are you doing? I was like, don't they clean this up? She was like, no. She's like, God, you're still a baby. And I'm like, I was like, not my fault you joined the Army. They clean my plate. But
The
that
two
it's funny.
branches are so different.
They are.
I mean,
They
even
are.
between all the different branches that we have, they're so different.
Yeah.
And yeah, just as simple as cleaning up after yourself. And,
Yeah.
that's so different than I grew up Army. So you clean up after yourself.
Exactly.
So
Because that's what she did growing up. She would always pretty much be like, Mom said clear the table. So she would have to like do the big chores. And so
yeah.
that was her first comment. You're still such a baby. I was like, what? I didn't make these rules.
Yeah, because I remember going to the unit even before Dad deployed, and we'd go to the unit, and I think there were a couple days that we had a meal there, and we had to clean up after ourselves. And then when we started living with Lina for a little bit, she was like, always make sure clean up after yourself because that's the way she had always known it.
Yeah. And Lina's just like she's pretty serious. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, because she'll probably listen to this.
She will. She's going to be like, I can't believe you said that. And I'm like, I didn't say anything.
It'll create like a little sibling war.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So, what were did you experience any benefits being a military child and then joining, or even going to college? Did you get any military related scholarships or anything of that sort?
I will say for that, I did not get any military, I guess, favored treatment, if you will.
Yeah,
Because my dad wasn't like an active duty member.
sure. And it's so different.
Yeah. And so he wasn't reservist either. He just went to DOD but worked on a military base. And
Sure.
so very different where we didn't have the GI benefits then. And I don't even think we would have qualified for anything like that at that time. So I got a scholarship out of high school that I turned it down for the Artist 2 to Pittsburgh. And I just wasn't ready to leave yet, I think was most of
Hmm.
it. And now, having been in the military and like I have a medical retirement, my kids will be able to use my GI Bill and to receive some of those benefits, even healthcare, like they have good
Yeah.
healthcare. And it's a guarantee, because both their father and myself they have that benefit. And that's I have a 90% disability rating where here next year, if it goes to 100, like they're saying, then they go to college for free, so it's a huge difference, definitely. Like, I mean, I will say that I'm grateful that I went through not having those benefits, because I learned a bigger respect for the system, where I'm like, I have to work for this. Like, I have to do good to do better, so it was an eye opener. But it is nice though that I can give that to my kids, where,
Yeah.
if I need to shake them a little bit, and be like, you're going, but
Yeah.
they have that option.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing, especially healthcare and being able to go to school. That's what I'm doing right now. I have, military scholarships, and I have Chapter 35 that I'm going to school off of. And then I also have healthcare because I still, my dad medically retired. So I have all of those benefits because I was a military child. So I'm very thankful, for those. And, it's definitely made it easier, a lot easier. And it's a lot better because I can focus on school more. And it's, my goal is for schooling and everything. So I'm very thankful to have that. And I'm sure your children will, be thankful for that one day too, when they
better
start.
be.
You didn't put in that work for nothing.
Exactly.
Do you think you'll encourage your kids to join the military, or do you think you'll let them make that decision more of their own?
I'd probably let them make that decision on their own. So now they both grow up around it quite a bit. Xavier more so than our youngest Walter, because I was still in when Xavier was born. So he remembers going to work with me, which is kind of funny because he was an infant, and he'll be like, "Remember when I used to go to your work?" And I was like, "How do you? There's no way you can remember that." And he was like, "Yeah, we would go in," and he would explain like my office, and so I was just like, "Oh wow, okay, you really remember." And like, he doesn't remember the whole thing, but he will
Yeah.
have like little phases where he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "There's no year, that was like 4 years ago." How do you?
How do you
And
even
he's
remember that?
yeah, and he's about to be 6, so and he's gone through deployments with his dad. Even when he was born, his dad and I were separated. We were at different bases, where I was in Ohio and he was in Korea. So for that whole first year, Xavier did not get that, other than he knew dad was at work. And so,
Yeah.
but Walter just knows, oh, daddy went to work. Where this deployment coming up, he'll probably recognize more that daddy's not around. But we're due with our third in like 7 weeks. So she'll have like no idea until,
Yeah.
like, there's another
It'll
one.
take a couple years.
Yeah. So it's crazy to see the differences, where Xavier mentally now is like, okay, I know daddy has to leave again. And Walter's like, sure, daddy's going to leave, but I know because of technology, he can still talk to him. And then
Yeah.
she won't even know. She'll just, he'll come home and be like, hey, look, here's a baby. And
It's
so,
definitely different with the ages.
yeah.
My sister and I were probably about 7 and 8 when dad rejoined the army. And, we were talking about this before, but the different experiences that we experienced, even though we're 15 months apart, that are crazy. We remember different things of different events, and there's some experiences she remembers more than I do, and
Right.
more than I remember than she does. So having the different age levels really plays a role on what you remember, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, Xavier, when we talked to him about what we did and what we do. So, we were talking about a camel, just for example, and his dad was like, your mom rode a camel before. And he's like, what? I was like, well, yeah, it was in the middle of Kuwait. He goes, where's Kuwait? So we brought out the map and we showed him where it was. And then it turned into, why were you there? And I was like, well, I was deployed because I was in the Air Force and my job took me over there. So I got to experience a different culture. And he starts to put that together now where you could see his little wheels moving. And
Yeah.
he'll tell us now, he's like, I'm going to fly airplanes like dad. And I'm like,
Oh.
where it's exciting but I'm like, mommy has so much anxiety with daddy. I was like, and you want to fly too. Help me. But I'm
Yeah.
excited for him. And if that's like the choice he wants to make, I fully support it. But it is hard because he's younger. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of friends pass away in the military. And he is recognizing how. And he drew a picture at school of the caption was, "Who is your hero?" And it was his dad by an airplane. And then it was like, "What is your biggest fear?" And it was a crashed airplane. So I was like, oh my God. And so I was like, okay, maybe we need to have this talk because he's starting to put it together. And that's like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, how one of our friends had passed away. And so, well, multiple of friends. And so he's like, well, could it happen? And I guess we don't hide the fact that it's a possibility, but we also try to reassure him that it's very unlikely. So it's, it's a it's a tough battle, but I'm like,
It is.
because you're like, how do you explain it? You're so little. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And even when dad got hurt, it was more of a, how do you tell an 8 and 9-year-old that their dad is hurt? Like
Yeah.
how do you even do that? How do you go about that? And so having to go through those talks and talk those through with him and, assure him that everything will be okay and, say, yes,
Yeah.
things could happen. That's a tough thing to do.
Right. And I think it's a huge difference between like the little boy next door and Xavier, where like his dad will go on a work trip, but he comes home in like a night or two, where dad goes on a work trip. He's gone for 30 days to who knows,
Yeah,
So it's tough. And so he has different experiences, but he's doing good.
that's awesome to hear. So do you guys live off base then?
We do. We
Yeah.
do. We're about 15 minutes from where we're stationed now, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Do you
exciting because we
ever
can see the airplanes fly over the house.
Oh, those are always so fun to see. Yes. Do you ever find that the boys ask to go to base and be around that like
All
you were
the
as a
time.
child? Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. Or like my husband will come home, and sometimes because of the squadron, there's that smell of like the uniform, and I'll tell him, I'm like, you smell like the fire department. And he's like, babe, that's sweat and jet fuel. And I'm like, that's probably what it is. But the kids love to see like any airplane that flies now, they think is daddy. Like, oh, it's
Yeah.
dad. But
Yeah.
so he'll go on what they call alert shifts. And so he'll be gone for a couple days at a time. And so we go to have dinner with him. And uh, the kids are like, oh, I wanna go see daddy. Can we go see the airplane? I want to watch dad fly. Oh, can we go
Yeah.
in the alert truck? Can we go see this? And it's just like, I get it now. Like, because that's what I used to like. I'm like, can we go see dad? And my mom was like, what? You want to go all the way out there? And I was like, yeah, I do. And it's the same where they're like, can we go see dad? I'm like, okay, you really want to go out there? But it's exciting for them, and I understand it. So they love going there. Where when COVID started to happen, they moved them out of the alert shack and would put them into billeting on base, and we would go there. And so the kids thought it was like a vacation because we were at a hotel. I was like, oh, this is easy because we couldn't do anything anyways because of the
Yeah.
COVID stuff. So going to be able to stay with him was like the most excitement they had because they could hear the jets and they could see the fire trucks. And so it's just like a whole nother world for them.
Yeah, and in little kids' eyes, it's
it's huge.
It is. It's like going to space or something. Like,
exactly.
That's all they see, and that's all they,
Yeah.
That's all that they know for a while too.
Right.
Like they grew up in it, so they're more inclined to, want to be around it for more time. Do you have a favorite place that you've been stationed at since your time in the service?
Yeah. I spent 5 years in Europe, in Italy.
Oh yeah, that's hands down.
Yes, that's actually where I met my husband. So it doesn't get better than that. It was probably it was stressful for a little bit because I was going through medical issues at the time, but it was all for good.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, and once I was returned to active duty after my med board closed, I was deploying, I was going TDY, and it's like everything was back in full swing. But being stationed there, totally different culture, which, it makes you just have a different respect for other countries, because you learn their like customs and courtesies and their different holidays. I think it was Bonafana. I'd have to ask my husband. I'm probably saying it wrong, but like burning of the witches, and it was like this huge bonfire, and you would just see all these fires, and there'd be people around it celebrating. And you're like, what is this? I'm like, you guys are trying to burn this place down. But it's huge for them, and to learn like I got fluent in singing happy birthday in Italian.
Yeah.
Ordering a pizza in Italian, and you don't get a slice of pizza over there. You get a whole pizza. I was like, oh, I just wanted a piece.
I just wanted one.
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of food. But and like here in America, you don't, I'll say it lightly, we can be pretty lazy.
Yeah. Yes.
Where our grocery stores 10 minutes down the road, maybe probably 5, and we could walk there, but we choose to drive, and we're in Italy, the market's right down the road and everybody walks everywhere. And so you're just healthier there, because you just kind of force yourself to fit in, and it's good for you. People run everywhere, they bike everywhere. All their festivals are outside, and they walk like even their farmers markets. Oh, it's amazing. Like everything's fresh.
Yes.
It's fantastic. I loved being in Italy, and the travel there. While I was there, I went to 13 different countries. And so it's, how do you say no? Like if we could go back, we would.
Yeah, for sure. It's as easy as like getting on a train there, and you can go anywhere.
Anywhere. Absolutely. You could hop on the train from Venice or Italy, in like the little town that we lived in, and go all the way to, excuse me, where am I thinking? You go to Venice, which is like an hour drive, but you could just hop on the train. You could go to Pisa, Florence, Rome. And so you're just like, wow, so much excitement, lots to do.
Yeah. We remember we took a family trip to Scotland a couple years ago, and it was the same way there. You walked everywhere. You took the bus. They had a kind of bus system that ran across all the different areas, and you'd take the bus, you'd walk. The Tesco, the grocery store, was right up the street, and anything you needed, you more or less walked to, or you took a bus. You didn't drive a car there. I was shocked at the amount of cars that were really there, because you didn't see them all over the place like you do in America.
Right. And Scotland was one of my favorites. It's one of the places I traveled from Italy. Amazing. They're so sweet. They're so nice.
They are.
It's beautiful there. It's all just green. So much
I know.
green. I actually went there for a Tough Mudder. It was pretty cool.
It sounds like it would be a cool one.
It was amazing. They're in the kilts playing the pipes and the bags.
Yep.
And so I'm just like, if it's like a thunderstorm in Scotland in the mud with bagpipes, you're just like, this is the most epic experience ever.
Yeah. Mom and Dad did the Scottish Yomp.
Oh,
They did the Scottish Yomp. And so that's where they take their soldiers through to train. And I might get the mileage wrong, but there's 3 different levels. The first one is a silver level or bronze, silver, and gold. And one of them is the first one's 20, around 25 miles, I think. The next one up is somewhere in the 30s, and then the final one is in the 50s. And so they did the bronze level, which is about 20, and it was all through the Scottish Highlands. And you just hiked the Scottish Highlands. And in America, when you're running or you're doing a race or something, you get water or Gatorade along the way, or maybe like an energy bar, a protein bar, something like that. They gave them like whole meals along the way. Like their pit stops were meals, like ice cream. I might get this wrong, but like blue cheese and crackers, like
probably right.
They'd give them all kinds of more heavy food and, drinks along the way than we would here.
Absolutely.
Because that's just what, that's what they've always done. That's what they're used to. And it was such a transition for them, even during those, couple miles of, okay, I'm hungry and I need food, but I don't want that. What else is there to eat? For sure.
That's funny. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really awesome. They did give us snacks along the way, but they gave us beer at the end.
That sounds like a Scotland thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called sheep's ale.
What we found when we were in Scotland, we stayed in Pennycook, which is right outside of Edinburgh, and we would walk. We stayed for about a week. I would say at least 3 or 4 of the nights we were there, we went to an Italian place for dinner. And you wouldn't think, we're going to another country, we're going to eat another country's food in another country.
Right.
But we went to this Italian place, and they had actually moved from Italy and opened up an Italian restaurant in Scotland. And that's what we ate almost the entire time. That with some fish and chips and haggis in between.
Oh man, that's hilarious. I mean, Italian food is delicious. Like we very, very far and few can we find places that we just like love when you turn into a food snob. You go to all these countries and you're just
I feel that.
Pizza.
I know. My dad always tells Mom that he ruined her for food because we had good food in Ohio. You had certain cultures up there and you had food there. And then in Texas, we had Mexican food all over the place. And then Scotland, you had like real fish and chips over there.
Yeah.
And here you have like seafood and stuff in Florida, but we've had so many different food culture, or I don't know if that's how you'd say it, but we've experienced so many different cultures that, we're snobs now to certain foods because we know the real thing.
We're like, it's just really good over there.
It's not the real stuff.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I love it here, but in Italy, oh my gosh, Europe, excuse me, we were deployed to Poland and Portugal, and you would ask for like clams, and they would it would be fresh catch. Like, so they would bring it in from the boat and drop it in your tank, and then they would scoop it out with a pan from the tank, and then they would cook them and then bring it out. So you would see them grab your live clams or oysters or anything. And so when you come here and you start eating them, like if you eat it here in Colorado, we're not close enough anywhere to where it's like fresh catch. So it's just kind of like, it's different where you're like, oh man, it'll never be the same. I'm ruined.
I know. It's so, you get spoiled on food and just experiences of different cultures. And yeah, you can never.
My kids don't like boxed Kraft macaroni and cheese, but they'll eat truffle porcini mushroom macaroni and cheese. Where we're like, you guys are snobs.
Even from this young of an age.
Yeah. And crab legs. I love crab legs. I love steak. And I'm just like, we're going to be broke. You guys like just the good food stuff.
Yes.
Eat a corn dog.
Have some regular food for once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, for sure. So unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I have one other question for you. And what advice would you give to either your kids or other military kids, or just any advice you have?
I guess in the sense of my kids, I would tell them to go to college, try it at least before they make that decision. Because even if they choose that they want to go, if you go to college first, you can always go in as an officer, which is also a much different experience. And that, it's hard, but that nothing worth having is going to be easy. And so if you want that experience and you want to travel, and for me, it was a sense of purpose. I struggle with that now, being out, because I miss putting on my uniform. I miss standing for that bigger cause. But I know I did my time. So it's just kind of like a house mom to active military mom. So it just was like a juggle for a while. I've been out for almost 4 years now, but my son still is like, can you go back? And I'm like, no, mommy can't ever go back. And so I want him to see that, there are options, there are choices. And if you work hard for what you believe in, then, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. And I like that we can share these experiences with him. And so I think if they choose to go, give them as much knowledge as you have to prepare them. So it's like having a baby, you're never fully prepared. But to, it's their choice. Once they're 18, if they want to go, 17, if they want to go and that's their dream, then go, do it, just make the most of it, because it's amazing. It is the best experience I've had. So I would definitely say go for it.
I think that's awesome. And, always chasing your dreams and, setting these goals in your life is so important. And being able to attain them is definitely, you feel this sense of joy inside of you to know that you've achieved something. And even in the military, you're helping others along the way and, making the country what it is.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much for being on. I'm super excited to have you on and have your sisters on. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And good luck. We have some of your cards, so we will be passing them out at his work so that other kids can hopefully get in touch with you.
That's so awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Grace of a Military Child podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please like, subscribe, comment, share, and review. You can also follow us at Grace of a Military Child podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for more content related to the podcast. If you or someone you know is a military child that would like to be featured on an episode of the podcast, please send a message to one of our social media platforms or send us an email to grace.of.a.military.child@gmail.com. Thank you, and join back next week for another inspiring story.